Hollywood has turned its spotlight on the Bible in the last year, and the latest chapter is a new six-part series that debuts on CNN this Sunday, March 1st. It's called Finding Jesus: Faith, Fact, Forgery. Joining us now to talk about the series is Dr. Mark Goodacre. He's the lead consultant on the documentary series and a professor of New Testament and Christian origins at Duke University. So great to have you on the broadcast. Some have called this series CSI Jerusalem. How would you describe it?
Well, thanks for inviting me on the show. It's great to be on the show. I think the series is one for people who are interested in searching. I mean, it's in the title, Finding Jesus. I kind of like that CSI Jerusalem title. I think that's kind of nice. But I mean, really what it's trying to do is say, are there any tangible links to the historical Jesus that we can put our hands on, and exploring all sorts of interesting artifacts that are connected with Jesus and early Christianity.
You know that secular media doesn't have the best track record when it comes to telling the story of Jesus and Bible. How would you assess this particular series?
I'm actually really thrilled with it. I think that they've done a really great job. And one of the things they've tried to do throughout is make sure that they fact-checked things. And they've really been careful to make sure that they won't say anything that is controversial or sensationalist or anything like that. Because, we've all seen the sensationalist documentaries. We've seen stuff, Jesus's lost tomb has been found or things like that. And you don't get any of that in this. It's just an honest, rigorous exploration of the evidence.
As I mentioned, the series is called Finding Jesus: Faith, Fact, Forgery. What's the forgery element?
Well, it's asking whether some of the artifacts that it discusses could be forgeries rather than original. So the episode that's on Sunday, for example, on the Turin Shroud, of course, there are many people that believe the shroud to be the authentic burial cloth of Jesus, but there are others that think that it's a medieval forgery. So that's the sort of question that it's posing. Or in another episode, we look at the James ossuary. This is James, the brother of Jesus, who there was a bone box that was discovered with his name on the side of it, and so asked there, is this a forgery? And it looks into the whole issue surrounding whether it's genuine, whether it's authentic, whether it goes back to the first century, or whether in fact it's a modern day forgery. So that's where the forgery element comes in.
How do you think the series will impact believers and then non-believers?
Well, I hope that in the case of believers, it will actually help them to appreciate the biblical text in new ways, because one of the things that it does is it teases out interesting details that you see in the biblical text that people might not have spotted before. I mean, it asks the difficult questions about who is this person, James, the brother of Jesus. He's mentioned several times in the New Testament. He was clearly an important figure. So it asks those questions. And lots of Christians, they don't pay attention to certain bits in the New Testament. And so I think they will enjoy going back to the text and seeing those. For unbelievers, for people who are outside of the church and outside of Christianity, I think that they will find all sorts of interesting, oh, I didn't know that moments. And, I think that it's nice to have a documentary that doesn't sensationalize, that is aimed at a broad viewership, that tries to deliver things as accurately and fairly as possible.
You are, as I mentioned, a professor of New Testament and Christian origins at Duke University, but I'm curious what drew you to this project?
I was asked whether I would like to advise on it. I've advised on a few other series in the past. I mean, for example, the History Channel Bible series last year that Roma Downey and Mark Burnett produced. I was involved a little bit with that. And with the previous series, The Passion, back in 2008, which was produced by the BBC and HBO. So I've had a few bits of experience of working with those sorts of things. And I think they knew of my interest in historical Jesus, in early Christianity, things like that. Also, of course, I'm based in America, but as you've probably noticed, I haven't got an American accent. I'm originally from the UK. And so that means that I think they liked the idea of someone that had some kind of reach across that sort of great sort of divide between the US and the UK.
Was there anything you've had your hand in various projects, as you mentioned, and being a professor at Duke, but did anything as a scholar, did anything surprise you in this series?
I suppose the thing which I most enjoyed, I think probably the pleasantest surprise, was watching the way that they attacked issues like the Gospel of Judas, because the Gospel of Judas, a lot of viewers may not be familiar with it. It was only very recently published in 2006. The document had been lost for many years. And I wasn't sure if they, how they would editorially deal with something that's, let's face it, is quite controversial. The idea that suddenly Judas Iscariot's gospel has turned up, but they did it very sensitively, very fairly, and they present each side of the debate on this gospel. So they ask, is Judas a hero in this gospel, or is he some kind of villain in the gospel? And it depicts it very cleverly, I think, both in terms of the way that they talk to the experts and in the way that they depict the drama. And it's also an interesting dramatic story about how the document, the Gospel of Judas, was discovered and restored. So I think I was very pleasantly surprised by the way that they dealt with those things, because, as you know, it's very easy to take a kind of wow, everything, Christianity was rocked to the core of its foundations and that sort of approach. And we don't have any of that. It's just responsibly done and fairly done, but done in a really sort of compelling way, I think.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Dr. Mark Goodacre, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast once again. The series is called Finding Jesus, Faith, Fact, Forgery, and it begins Sunday on CNN. Thanks for being on the broadcast.
Pleasure. Enjoyed it.